what we're going to get into now is some accounting. We're still going to do a lot of talking, but I want to just kind of give people an appreciation for the numbers behind this and how those numbers can first really present a razzle-dazzle. But then when we get into some of the weeds with the numbers, I think a lot of us are going to see, I hope all of us see, how you got to be careful with this potential Trojan horse. So now we're going to switch to, I'm going to use, son, your property here as an example, right? So I don't know if do we have it on the screen now?
Yeah,
or?
yeah.
Oh, great. So people can hear my voice, but they can't see me right now?
Yeah.
All right, okay. When you look at this right here, son, this is an overview of your property. This is the location of, well, this is where your facility is, your business. This is your home. I took a hypothetical example here, and if you notice, this is a size. This is one of the, obviously all this property. I think all of this is yours, all around in here. Mm-hmm. But this piece right here, I just took a hypothetical plot of land that I think covers a couple of your farm beds, your garden beds that are on the side.
Yep.
And this plot of land, if you notice, is a little less than the size of your house, right? Mm-hmm. So when I I'm going to go to. I'll come back to this. We were just talking about the numbers, the days of the numbers. We've been talking about that for a while, but this is an interesting book. It's called it's about the numbers game in Cincinnati. What I want to get to, though, is let's go to the spreadsheet. Okay, so.
You got to close out the presentation.
Oh, that's right. That's right.
Or minimize it.
Yeah, just close it out. And we'll close. We'll minimize that. There we go. Okay. Now, what I'm going to do, I don't know how well everyone can see these numbers, so I'm going to kind of call them out. I don't know if you can. Oh, can you zoom in? Is there a way to zoom?
Yeah, down in the right corner.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Of course. Oops, not that. Let me go here, come up, and here's our zoom.
Yep.
All right. When we look at the that square foot area that I mapped out next to your house, son, that square foot area is 1,104. That's 1,104 square feet. Can we see that number, or should I zoom it, make it a little?
Zoom in a little more.
Okay. How's that?
That's good.
A little bit more, or is that good?
That's good.
Okay.
That's good.
So that area that we just squared off is 1,104. That's 1,104 square feet. And if you do any preliminary research, this is everything I'm talking about. These are like rule of thumbs or standard rules as a point of reference. If you're going to grow a marijuana plant, the room that you'll need, basically, when you're growing those plants, they should be about 5 feet apart. Some say 3 to 7 feet, so I'm just going to go with 5 feet apart. So when we do the math on that, that means that right next to your home, that square, that area that we just outlined, that's enough room to grow 221 plants. You follow me so far?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And I hope your listening audience is following. Well, with that 221 plants, the average yield, in other words, the average, the buds, the product that people use to get high from, the average yield per plant is 17 ounces. And that's 17 ounces for one grow. When you grow the marijuana plant, you can have 4 grows. In other words, there's a period from about May through August where you'll be able to harvest from that plant 17 ounces, and then you can go back and harvest it again, and 2 weeks later, and you pull something else from that plant, another 17 ounces. You can do that 4 times. That's 17 ounces per plant. If you have 221 plants, you do that 4 times. The total yield per season is 15,028 ounces. And that's 15,028 ounces. That's all. That's what's happening right next to your home, hypothetically, if we were to do this. Given that you have a good product, the range on a marijuana, the price per marijuana, it really ranges from, some low-grade marijuana would run for would cost about $225. Mid-range would be $250. I'm going with the high end right here of $289 an ounce. That's how much it costs. That's the retail value of the marijuana. When we do the math on that, in that little patch of land right next to your home, the gross on that is $4,343,000 and change per year. So when you first look at that number, and I mean that's a pretty good number for just a little patch of land next to your property. We're not even getting into what that number would be if you could get to the types of the space, if you would expand that to the space that you have around beyond that little patch, which you would have room to do. You would see that. You can just imagine what that number would look like. Now, when we look at that number, if we scroll down, and let me know if I need to bring this up any higher.
That's
okay. All right. So we don't need to zoom in anymore. When we look at this, these are some expenses, and again, these are all projections. So none of this is actual. This is all like based on projections and hypotheticals based on just based on the rule of thumb and what I've gathered in terms of what the expense numbers would look like, our expenses would look like for a given growth, and this is a small operation that we're talking about here. This is a very small operation, as we'll get into in a moment, where you can appreciate it. But now, so given this, here are the kinds of expenses that would be incurred if you with your operation. And I'm going to set aside that whole notion of all of them are like, this is cannabis growers are from the street and they're criminals and all that. At the end of the day, everybody, even if you're from the street or if you're an executive, at the end of the day, you need to be a farmer. And so these farmers also have to wear the kinds of hat where the farmers have to wear the kinds of hats where they're also business folks as well, right? So legal fees, yeah, you will incur some legal costs. We can talk about that if we need to. Accounting is a big deal with accounting. And we're not only are we talking about the internal bookkeepers and things like that, we're talking about the cost of external accountants, because a big part of that is not only accounting for it to minimize taxes, which is what we're going to kind of get into a little bit, but it's also accounting for the tracking requirements on the part of the state of Michigan. The state of Michigan requires all cannabis operations, be it growers, processors, or these dispensaries, which is the retail places where you actually go and buy the product. They have to be connected to something called the metric system. And that metric system tracks every transaction associated with cannabis operations. Every sale, every conversion in the processing cycle to get that plant from a bud to a grown plant that's ready to be harvested, to what you harvest off that plant. At those 3 steps, all of that information is tracked, and the tracking involves a unique barcode associated with, in the case of the bud, there's a barcode associated with that. It's a tag. It's an RFID tag. And that's a radio frequency identification tag associated with the bud, associated with the plant itself when that plant grows, and also associated with the products as you harvest the product. Then as you bag that product, there's also a RFID code tag associated, a barcoded tag associated with that. And then as you sell that product, or if you break that, you may, like in your case, in our hypothetical, you might have the bag of cannabis that you've produced. You may sell that to another processor that actually takes what's in that bag, and they may create edibles from that.
So this is similar to a car. A car product, like when your VIN number kind of can go back to the dealership, the factory, then that factory can even go further with the part. Hence, if it's like, hey, you have this recall on a axle in your car or something,
right,
come on into the dealership, and it's like, how did they even know that? And I have two of these same cars, but the other car didn't come from that plant, that dealership, that part specifically. But it's just like the automotive industry for a lot of people, from Detroit that are thinking in that way.
You know what? That's an excellent analogy, son. That is so true. It is very much like cars, and so things like shrinkage. Okay, that shrinkage could not only be, people might think, well, shrinkage, that means that people are stealing the weed. Well, no, shrinkage could just be different damage that's done. If some of the plants just don't grow right, those kinds of things. And we're looking at shrinkage of $130,000. We're looking at the packaging cost, because that product has to be packaged. With the state of Michigan, like other states, there's some testing that's involved, some quality control testing. So when you look at these are all the costs. Some of these costs should be familiar. The cost of gas and electricity. Notice, in order to get that gross of $4 million, now I'm probably kind of conservative on these numbers. Some of these numbers would probably be a little lower, but we're talking about 10% of that would go toward gas and electricity. A large part of that goes toward, obviously, water. This would probably be a savings because we're growing outside, so it would be a little less than that. Your biggest cost here is labor, because at the end of the day, keep in mind, the marijuana business is really the farming business. The bank fee, bank service fees. Someone might look at that and say, there's no way in hell you're going to have bank service fees of $43,000 or $44,000. But in order for the banks, first of all, the banks, because the marijuana is still at the federal level considered a Schedule I illegal substance, the banks have been reluctant to work with cannabis businesses because of that. So now, because of all the money to be made, banks are also finding workarounds. The catch with what the banks find, though, the catch is the banks will find workarounds, but the cannabis operators have to pay. And the bank's position is that in order for us to feel comfortable with extending the banking services, and you got to really have these banking services, like, being able to cash checks, being able to have your vendors go to the bank and feel confident in cashing a check, or debit and credit cards, those kinds of things. They want to have pretty strong monitoring apparatus in place, a way to actually monitor the activity that's done online. But we're talking about the marijuana business.
Yeah.
The marijuana business is subject to 280E. And that means 280E,
Can you zoom in?
Oh, yeah, let me zoom in. 280E means that you, zoom in some more. How's that?
That's good.
Okay. Same set of numbers, folks. Same scenario. Same expenses. The bottom line, though, is if you just treat these expenses and you don't take advantage of what people refer to as the loophole, and we're going to talk about that loophole next, all of these expenses are not deductible.
Yeah.
Which means, look at this bottom line here. This bottom line means that you're going to pay, if you just really jump into business, you don't do your homework, you're not talking to your attorneys and accountants, you say, look, I kind of know the business. I'm a farmer when it comes to what I do. I know how to farm. I know how to grow. I got my license. I'm going to grow this weed, right? I'm going to sell it. And I cleaned up and I made $4.4 million, but you didn't follow you weren't in compliance with the rules that we're talking about. You pay taxes on $4.3 million. The taxes on that $4.3 million is $1.7 million roughly. $1,675,000. And now, it just so happens, good news a little, while the state still collects the sales tax and excise tax, they got that damn metric system that's all on your back, they'll let you count all these expenses.
Yeah.
What 280E says, you can't write off any expenses when you're selling an illegal substance. All of the operational costs are non-deductible, except you can write off the cost of the goods that you sell. In other words, the cost of goods sold you can write off. And
Okay,
so
this is another one of those classic accounting terms.
Yep.
This is taking you back to accounting 1 for
It
everybody
is.
with a bachelor's. Right there, your trial balance. You remember that? Dust it off.
yeah, what we're talking about is really what they're saying. In that balance sheet, we're talking about any inventoriable items you can sell. Well, what's your inventoriable item? Your inventoriable item is the weed, is the cannabis, is that product, right? So you say, well, I'm growing that product, so I don't really have, it's not like I bought the product from someplace else. I'm growing, I took a seed and put it in the ground. I'm a farmer, I grew the product. So, I paid 75 cents for the seeds. So I can write off the 75 cents against the 4.3 million. Yeah, you can write off the 75 cents. But just like those manufacturing plants that make cars, that make all the subassemblies for those cars, the cost that goes into, we'll say, an assembly are the components. And if you think about what a component is not only other parts it's not only those it's not only those components, it's also the paint. It's also the fact that somebody had to finish it and polish it, that particular part. They had to varnish it or sand it down, right? Well, the labor associated with finishing, varnishing, painting, right? All of that labor is called direct cost. So our bottom line here, when we have when we allocate a few more, just actually those two other line items, it makes a huge difference because now we do have taxable income of the $1.4 million. Yeah, we're paying taxes of $378,000 on that. But at least we have a better bottom line. This is the federal taxes, and FICA. And then, of course, here's our state and city, which hasn't changed.
It stays the same. Yeah.
So we've got total taxes of $414,000. But that's we're a little better because we've got $132,000 or 133 rounded up $1,000 that's in our pockets, and that's not counting whatever we collected on management fees, because we paid ourselves as owners, right? So, but the real deal here is, and we can end in the spreadsheet. We're done with that. And I think we've done the job of letting people know, hey, here's what you're up against. This is after you get past the hurdles that we're about to talk about now.